Welcome to our Natural Habitat Adventures webinar today, Voyage to the Amazon Headwaters, presented by Renzo Zappilli, who is coming to us live from Lima, Peru. From an early age, Renzo developed a deep love for the natural side of his native Peru, which he is passionate about sharing with NatHab guests as an expedition leader on our Amazon River voyages. Renzo was born and raised between Peru's capital of Lima and the nearby Andes Mountains. Nature, especially birds, attracted his attention as a child. And eventually deciding to pursue a career that would allow him to spend time and share time in nature, Renzo studied nature tourism business management at the University of Nueva Esparta in Caracas. He became a licensed guide and then went on to attain a master's degree in environmental education, which prepared him to become a field expert. Renzo worked first in southeast Peru with the intense biodiversity of the upper Amazon rainforest. He then traveled extensively through South America, working as a researcher on conservation projects and as a naturalist bird guide in Brazil's Pantanal, the Caribbean coast of Colombia, the Ecuadorian cloud forest, and also in Cuba. He is a board member of the Peru Bird Records Committee, otherwise known as the PRBC, and has seen more than 1,500 bird species in his native country. And I bet he's above 1,500 right now. We'll have to find out for sure. So Renzo, welcome.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Yeah, I'm so proud today I will be able to take you into this amazing voyage through the Amazon Basin, one of my favorite parts of the planet. So, well, yes, I am proud to tell you that I have more than 5 years working with Natural Habitat Adventures, and right now the Amazon Basin is one of the places where I travel between 3 or 4 times per year nowadays. I also do some of the voyages to undiscovered Cuba and also to the monarch butterflies in Mexico. But today I'm taking you into this amazing, largest river system of the world. The Amazon Basin is more than 4,000 miles in length in terms of the river, the Amazon River itself, and it's the amazing number of tributaries that it has, more than 1,100, make this the largest river system in the world, an amazing basin. But it's interesting, first of all, to locate ourselves where we are right now. This is, imagine Peru, and we are east of the Andes, and we are over the Amazon Basin. This is an amazing area that has several countries neighboring with it: Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, part of Bolivia. It's actually 70% of Peru comprises this part of the Amazon. Well, it's very important to know that, first of all, the Amazon River used to flow in the opposite direction. You know, because of plate tectonics, that South American continent was tilted to the opposite direction. It was tilted towards the west. And then the Amazon River, that was born in the eastern mountains of Brazil, used to flow from east to west. Gradually, the continent moved, the Andes arose, it tilted towards the east, and we have the current flow of the Amazon River that is born in the Andes of South Peru, flows north first, and then goes towards the east into Brazil and into the Atlantic Ocean. This is the area that we are going to cover today. The Amazon River is the second, the second largest river by volume in the world. Is actually the Congo River. But in this part of the world, we have 2 other rivers, Negro River and Madeira River, that rival the Congo. This is an amazing environment. The water level can fluctuate more or less between 40 feet. That's an amazing amount of sediments being exposed, and then all this volume of water going up and covering this amazing area that we sometimes call water world. Just imagine the amount of water that is produced in this part of the world. First of all, we have all the evaporation of the Atlantic Ocean that moves towards the west by the trade winds. And all these moisture-loaded clouds continue towards the west. One drop will fall 7 times before it reaches the Andes Mountains. And all this water that is going downstream and covering all this amazing area produces about 500 billion cubic feet of water per day. Imagine the amount of water that exits the Amazon River at its mouth, which is more or less 300 miles. One day of the water produced there can quench the thirst of the city of New York for 9 years. So we are talking about amazing proportions. And all this water goes 125 miles into the Atlantic Ocean, forming at the mouth an island formed by the sediments, which is the size of Switzerland. Well, Peru, it's an amazing country. It belongs to one of the 12 mega diverse countries in the world. These 12 countries boast more than 70% of the world's diversity. For example, in Peru, we have 84 out of the 117 life zones that Mr. Holdridge, a researcher, established in a criteria trying to classify the different life zones that are found in the world. So more than 80% of these life zones is found in this amazing country. Imagine we can have snow-capped mountains like in the Himalayas. We have dry forests like in parts of Africa. We have a cold water current, the Humboldt current, El Niño current like in Galapagos, and many other amazing life zones, just to name a few. We have amazing world records in terms of positions of different groups. For example, we are #1 in number of species of orchids recorded in the world. We are first also in terms of the amount of fish recorded in this country, and I am talking, just imagine that not only the amount of freshwater fish that we find in the Amazon Basin and in the Andes, but also the amount of fish that is found on the Humboldt Current, which is one of the richest in the world. We are #2, or sometimes move to the 3rd place in birds, with more than 1,800 species. And we are 5th in mammals, 7th in plants, 8th in reptiles. And well, what I am mentioning all this is something very interesting, because all these mega diverse countries have a very high endemism, and they have groups of animals and plants that can only be found in those places. For example, talking about these countries, of course, we have Peru, we have Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil, Mexico, Madagascar, China, India, just to name a few. In this particular case, for our country, Peru, the Andes create the diversity, considering that it is the longest mountain range in the world, with more than 4,500 miles from north to south. Some amazing species of animals that can be found in this area, for example, include the 2 species of freshwater river dolphins. We have the gray river dolphin that I have featured, and we have also the pink river dolphin that we will see in some minutes. This area also is the home to many native groups. Still, we can find some groups that lost contact since the early 20th century and the late parts of the 19th century, when there was a rubber boom in the area and a lot of ethnic groups fled into the forest, and some of them are still living there. Most of them have contact with the civilization in different stages, and this is interesting to see some of these, especially the river people, the people that live along the river banks, the riveranians, and how they still have traditions that they have from their ancestors, mixed with the different cultures that created this type of mestizo culture. Well, this is our very comfortable chartered private riverboat. This has capacity for 28 guests. All the cabins have panoramic windows, so we can watch nature from our beds, basically. This is a very comfortable ship that suits all our needs to explore this amazing area. Here we have a map of the area that our expedition will explore. That actually, if you see on the upper right of the screen, there's a city called Iquitos. So we fly from Lima, an hour and 45 minutes northeast, and we cross the Andes, cross part of the rainforest, or the Peruvian portion of the rainforest, and arrive to this booming city of 500,000 people living by the Amazon River. This is a very interesting place. From there, we have to drive south to a smaller town called Nauta, and that's where we take our boat. We go out, we leave the port, and then we go out on excursions, daily excursions on these smaller boats, auxiliary boats, also called skiffs, with outboard engines, and we are 2 expedition leaders, and we have 3 local guides that among all of us, we distribute ourselves and go out to explore very interesting tributaries. And we also do some interesting walks, some trails along the forest. It all depends on the water level, because as I was telling you, the fluctuation is amazing. That depends on the season. Sometimes we have more water in the area, so everything is relatively flooded, so we have more chances to explore deeply some of the tributaries and also go with our kayaking excursions into these tributaries. Or if the water level is lower, it allows us to do more walks, more jungle walks, and explore on foot some of the trails that finally are exposed over the water. Well, here we have an interesting patch of giant water lilies, also called Victoria regia, which is actually one of the most interesting plants we can find in our expeditions into this part of the Amazon. These plants are actually between 3 and 5 feet in terms of diameter. And some experiments that were developed a long time ago in the Kew Botanical Gardens in England tell us that actually they were testing how much weight one of these leaves could hold, and they say that it can hold a baby up to 3 months. I don't know which baby they used for the testing, but basically this is interesting just to think about how nature evolved in this way to have these amazing floating leaves that also work for many birds and other species as areas to make or build their nests over these floating. Well, something very interesting about this area is also that it is called the jungle of the mirrors. In general, in this part of the world, we have 2 types, technically speaking, we have 2 types of water. We have white water rivers that actually are the rivers that come flowing down from the Andes at fast speed, bringing a lot of sediments, having white waters, rapids in the upper sections. And when they get to the Amazon basin, they look murky. They look like chocolate. They are brownish looking rivers loaded with sediments, which are basically the ones that are called, technically speaking, white water rivers. On the other hand, we have all these rivers, lakes, and smaller tributaries that were born, that were created inside the forest, inside some lakes, and due to the amount of sediments, due to the amount of organic materials, due to the amount of leaves that have fallen into these slow-moving bodies of water, all this organic material releases the tannic acids and makes these areas what we call, technically speaking, black water, rivers or lakes. And when you see the reflection of the sun on this creates perfect mirrors. That's why they call this area the jungle of the mirrors. And this you can see in this particular picture, a little village by one of these lakes, and this is the effect that it's caused. Well, among the wildlife that we have the chance to see, well, remember that the Amazon Basin is an area so big, but that has a lot of interesting species of plants and wildlife, of course, but this is a place where the wildlife is not easily seen, because first of all, the visibility is very short. Let's say all these plants are providing perfect areas for the wildlife to blend and camouflage with their surroundings. There are so many different species of animals in this area that one of our main topics about the Amazon is specialization. Each animal, each plant is specialized on a particular diet, on a particular habitat or microhabitat. But this makes this area also very interesting because there are many predators always looking for prey. So the animals don't have basically fixed territories where if you go every day you can find them. So that's what actually adds to this expedition an interesting touch of exploration, because we never know what we're going to see. We go out and explore, and we are always on the search, and whatever moves, we are going to try to see what it is, or point at it, or approach without harming or bothering the animals. But in general, it's very difficult to tell in advance what we might see. But some of the things that are relatively common and that we seldom miss in our journeys, speaking of wildlife, let's say, for example, we have three-toed sloths, like the one that we have featured right now. This is one of the species of mammals that we see easily, especially along the river margins. In this particular case, we can see that this individual is a male. In the lower right, or in the back of this individual, you see a patch of rufous skin. It's a little patch of very velvety fur that actually has this rufous color. And as this species has sexual dimorphism, we can tell the male from the female by this patch on the back. So something very interesting. And again, talking about adaptation, take a look at those claws that this animal has, especially designed to go from branch to branch, from tree to tree. It's any climber's envy, I would say. They have very, very powerful arms and legs, and they spend most of their life in the trees. They only go down to the ground, to do their biological meetings, and then they return back to the trees and they can stay days. We see often these species. Sometimes the two-toed sloth, which is mostly nocturnal, but basically at daytime during our excursions we find three-toed sloths. And this is something also very interesting. We have the chance to find this very rare and elusive monkey called the monk Saki monkey. These type of monkeys, they look really big, but actually what you can see here is very fluffy fur that actually makes the animal look much larger. Actually, these animals were in near the large cities and developments in the rainforest, getting to a critical point because they were overhunted. A long time ago, the people hand them and cut their tails to use them as table dusters. Amazing. Nowadays, gradually with education in the reserve, this is changing slowly. And we can see more and more of these species with troops moving around some of the trees in the tributaries that we visit, inside the reserve especially. Well, we have here one of our excursion boats, and you can see this is we use 3 of these particular boats that the ship has, larger cruise. And basically what we do is the main boat is navigating along the larger tributaries. We have all these scheduled activities. We usually offer pre-breakfast optional outings. Then the whole group gathers for breakfast in a very nice and comfortable air-conditioned dining room. And after breakfast, we have usually an activity, and for a couple of hours or 2 or 3 hours, we are out exploring, and then come back for lunch. We have a little break after lunch, and then we have another excursion in the afternoon, and usually we end the day with some interesting talks about our days or other interesting topics about this part of Peru. Well, here some of the other species that we can find around. For example, these are the very rare owl monkey. Basically, these are nocturnal, but sometimes we find them at daytime when they are roosting in tree cavities. You can see they have these huge eyes. It's actually the only nocturnal monkey in the world There's another nocturnal primate, but in terms of monkeys, it is the only nocturnal monkey in the world. Actually, it has been split into several species nowadays, but they are so cute and so curious, and it's amazing when we can find them. Well, in terms of insects, also we have a very large diversity of insects. Of course, basically the base of the trophic web in this case, in terms of invertebrates. In this case, for example, we have one that is called the scarlet-tailed dragonfly. And something interesting about dragonflies, we see more than 10 or 12 species usually when we explore some of the swampy areas. The interesting thing about dragonflies is that they are kleptoparasites. They are moving around and they are stealing from the spider webs the prey that the spiders capture. So this makes this interesting little insect something very interesting about the areas that we visit. Just for your knowledge, another kleptoparasite that we find in this part of the world are the hummingbirds. Hummingbirds also do that same behavior, stealing some insects from the spider webs, because that helps with their protein ingestion, their needs for protein. So here we are in one of our boats, one of our excursions. And well, this area, the Pacaya Samira Reserve, which was created in 1982, is an area that comprises 5 million acres. This is a huge area that has an amazing array of species and protects many interesting ecosystems of this part of the Amazon Basin. Basically, the Pacaya Samira Reserve is found between the two main tributaries that form the Amazon River. The Amazon River actually is formed by two large rivers that are born in the Andes. One is called the Marañón, which is a native name for cashew nut, and the other one is called the Ucayali, which in native language means canoe breaker. These two rivers form the Amazon River, and from that particular point that we call from that particular point, where the confluence that we call the confluence, from there the Amazon River flows towards the east. But we explored not only part of the Amazon River, but also these main tributaries that form this particular river, and everything in between these two rivers is this amazing 5 million acre Pacaya Samira Reserve. Well, our partners, the WWF, the World Wildlife Fund, have worked in this reserve for many years also, trying to establish a way of sustainable development involving the local population, because the main threats to this reserve are cattle ranching, agriculture, both types, large, into the large scale and small scale agriculture, some logging and some mining. But basically, there's a lot of illegal hunting, because this large reserve provides a lot of potential food for the nearby cities of Iquitos, Nauta, and others around. So being such a big area, it was very difficult to control the entrance of illegal loggers, of poachers, into this amazing basin that has hundreds of small tributaries that you can use to go to a reserve. So with the help of WWF and the local National Park Service, the idea was established with a new approach, which is involving the local populations in the protection of the protected areas, instead of just having rangers that won't be enough to cover such a large area. So what was done here? Basically, there are more than 120 communities that live within the areas of the reserve. Some of them were there before the reserve was established, and some of them are across the rivers in an area that is called the buffer zone. So gradually, through environmental education, we have been able to make the local people understand that that's their future involved there. And by an interesting program of volunteer rangers, some of the villagers were working with some of the official rangers as volunteers, and they were paid in quotas of extraction. For example, I'm saying there was a group of volunteers making sure that all the turtles will lay their eggs in a certain beach and avoid them being poached by illegal hunters. So at the end of the season, from the number of eggs that they have harvested for this particular project, there's a percentage that these rangers can take and sell, and it's a calculation made by the park itself, and that's the way they are paid, and at the same time they are taught in how to do an managed sustainable harvesting of wildlife in this particular case, or wildlife products, which are the eggs. So this is a modern approach on how to make the local people understand that what they have is very important, but if they are not involved in the protection of it, it will vanish soon. But if they harvest, whatever they need to harvest, either wood or animals in the right season, in the right numbers, and under control, nature will provide for it. So that's part of the challenge that we have now there. Based on WWF, one of their main mottos says to build a future in which people live in harmony with nature. And that's our main goal. We're trying to develop this type of tourism that is basically helping with conservation, and a big percentage of what is being paid for this journey is going to support our partners that are doing research and helping us with these very interesting programs that involve environmental education. We'll take a look when we go out in our excursions. Sometimes we program some nocturnal excursions, and it's very interesting because what you see at daytime is completely different than what you see at night, of course. A completely different set of wildlife, of animals awake as soon as the sunset falls. And for example, we have many different species of bats. These are bats that sometimes can be seen at daytime also. These are called the long-nosed bats. And it's interesting how they are lined upside down. They try to mimic leaves. So when you approach a bit, they all begin rocking from one side to the other to look like leaves. And then, well, it's interesting because gradually it gets darker and darker. It looks like a storm is coming, but still, we're going out. We navigate inside the reserve, and then we try to find a very nice spot for a sundowner, a nice moment, a little break to talk about what happens at that time of the day in the rainforest, and then enjoy this wonderful concert of everything calling almost at the same time, and with these amazing views of the refraction over the water. Well, and when it gets completely dark, we begin one activity that we call sometimes find your own frog. Actually, what we do is we are in these skiffs, we approach certain patches of floating vegetation. We are not getting off the boat, of course, but each one of us tries to find a frog by your side. We, of course, the guides and us, the expedition leaders, will be searching for different frogs and trying to point them in the different leaves with our flashlights. But it's amazing if you can find or spot your own frog by your side. That's something interesting. Here we have one of the tree frogs that we find there. It's actually the giraffe form of a clown tree frog. And in this particular case, it's a male with a vocal sac. It's inflating because that night, after a hard rain, they were all the males were very, very loud, trying to call the females. So it was a very interesting night to go out. Well, among some of the activities that we also have on board, we have some kayaks with us. So we organize the small groups, and we offer everybody the chance to go out kayaking into these small tributaries. It's actually a very pleasant experience. There's no previous experience required for these navigation. Basically, these are very stable kayaks or sometimes small canoes, and what we do is we choose some tributaries that are very flat and slowly moving we bring our kayaks upstream with one of our skiffs, and after a safety briefing, we begin navigating downstream slowly, searching for wildlife, enjoying the sounds, and always we have, this is a skiff-supported activity we always have behind us, one of our skiffs, just in case anybody needs to replenish water or stop navigating. But basically, we go along these very interesting tributaries, and actually we have a lot of fun, as you can tell. Well, and then we also visit some interesting communities. As I was telling you earlier, the people here are not completely natives. There are very, very few native communities. We actually visit one local shaman that actually comes from a native community. She's a Kokama Kokabila. She's a true native. But most of the other communities that we visit are what we call the river people, the people that live along the margins of these rivers. A long time ago were natives that got mixed with all the different settlers that came from the Andes of Peru, from nearby Colombia and Brazil, and nowadays have formed this culture that is called the Ribereños, or river people. One of the interesting things about these communities is that we also interact with some of the school kids, and that's interesting. They share with us a lot of their daily lives, and they are able to see some of their crops and their farms to see what they are growing and what they normally have as a diet. And on one of our last afternoons, we also go to a very interesting place called the Amazon Park. And this place has an amazing set of, I would say, hanging bridges. Basically, it's called a canopy walkway, the Amazon Canopy Walkway. And it connects several trees. It's a very nice and delightful activity, actually. And the whole walk at a very slow pace takes about an hour and a half, more or less. And this is a very safe area. And we have the chance to see the forest from a different perspective, from the canopy. Because we have different levels or strata in the forest. And most of the time we are walking through the undergrowth along trails. But in this particular case, we have the chance to see everything from above. All these huge bromeliads, epiphyte plants, orchids. Sometimes we see some monkeys moving around, sometimes some birds. Basically, the idea is to see everything from a different perspective. It is another view of that area. It's very interesting. We divide ourselves in smaller groups and we go slowly, gradually, so everybody can be quiet and enjoying the activity at the same time. Well, and yeah, I wanted to share this interesting image with you. Also, certain times of the year, we have amazing numbers of birds, especially coming to this part of the Amazon. Some of them are crossing the Andes, so they are coming from west to east, and some of them come from the southern parts of the South American continent, escaping the southern hemisphere winter. So it's amazing, especially when the water level is receding or when the water level is rising. You can see hundreds of birds, basically in the group of the egrets and herons, just flying in front of us. Everything is covered in white sometimes, and it's just amazing. Well, I think my explanation is coming to an end. I will now be open for questions. I hope you have enjoyed this, and of course, I hope to see you there. This is, as I was telling earlier, this is something that must be on your bucket list, one amazing part of the planet, and I will be glad to share this place with you. So thank you very much again for your attention.
Yes, thank you, Renzo. So we have some questions from our audience, and so I will get right into those. We have a question here wondering what the best month would be to take an Amazon trip.
Okay, so for this year, for example, through years of exploring the area, we have decided that there are certain months of the year that are perfect for us in terms of the conditions of the river, in terms of river level, the conditions of the trails. So that's why we have chosen basically 3 dates for 2018 and a couple more for 19. Basically, we go there at the end of June and beginning of July. Another interesting month is the end of September. And then we go again at the beginning of November. Basically, what we avoid is from December to March when it's rainy. So we try to avoid that season. We have found out that these dates actually are very good for us since our past year's experiences. So that's the data we are offering this year and next month.
Mm-hmm. And so if you were passionate about birds, of the months that you mentioned, would one of these months be better than another?
Actually, an interesting month will be September if you like birds, because we will be able to see some of the resident species, but also some of the northern migrants that are already heading south. So there's a sort of overlapping of resident species and some of the northern ones. In June, for example, it's a different set of birds because we have the resident ones, but we also have some of the austral migrants or the birds that live in Argentina and Chile, Bolivia also, that fly north towards the Amazon to spend our southern hemisphere winter. So it's a difficult decision to make actually, but for sure, a lot of birds are seen around here.
All right, thank you. That's good to know. Now, how strenuous is this trip? How physically fit must one be?
Well, this is a very basically it's considered a soft effort level. Because we have some of the activities that we do are mostly on the skiffs, and we also offer some of the walks, but we always explain perfectly before each walk if it's going to be too hard or not. Probably one walk that is in terra firme forest is a bit hilly, is one that is usually a challenge for some of our guests. But besides that, everything is perfectly doable, and it's in a flat area mostly, and we are always there to help you. So just join us on the walks.
Thank you. So what other sort of activities other than the motorboats, what other activities are offered?
Well, we go on different walks. For example, we walk to a community. We walk to another one to see the patch of giant water lilies. Basically, we have some activities that are indoor, in which we have some talks about the Amazon, the threats and which are our perspectives for conservation. We have a couple of little workshops where we learn also how to prepare some of the local dishes. And then the kayaking excursions. But remember that the area that we are covering is basically water world. It's a huge area, mostly covered with waters. So that's why most of our activities involve some sort of navigation or navigating first and then walking.
All right, I see. Thank you. And we have questions about bringing gifts to the children of the area. Do you have suggestions for what we could bring?
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, we appreciate very much when you bring something for the local kids. We suggest that everything should be related with school supplies. That's what we basically lack in the area. We have providing different communities with supplies for years, and everything is welcome. And thank you very much again. What we do is we let you know in one of the first days where to put all the supplies that you have gladly brought along with you. And based on the amount of supplies that we have per trip, we decide which communities are going to receive that amount based on what we have been giving them before, basically. So what we will suggest is don't bring anything that you think will turn into waste after 5 minutes. And please, nothing that is in terms of edibles or something like strawberry, say lollipops, or any type of sugar that can affect their teeth. So again, basically something that will be useful for them, especially related with school supplies.
All right, that's great. Thank you for your guidance on that. We have a question about food. What type of food are served for meals?
This is something very interesting because the cruise provides an amazing gourmet food, but using a lot of local ingredients. So it's a very varied food. Peru is considered nowadays one of the top 5 destinations in the world because of the culinary or gastronomy that this country has. So a lot of the traditional Peruvian food is offered, but it is no spicy. When we have something that includes chili, let's say it's served aside, a lot of fresh fruit, fresh juices, an amazing array of fish and different types of meat, and a lot of different vegetables and preparations. And we also cover all this wide array of dietary requirements. We cater any requirements, and the kitchen is always preparing that, and we are always coordinating with our cruise director to make sure that all the dietary requirements are covered.
That's good to know. Thank you. Okay, so let's see, I think we're just about finished with our questions here. Is there a good chance of seeing Jaguar or Puma on the trip?
No, the chances are very low because as this area is basically a huge marsh, basically of almost 5 million acres, and mostly everything is flooded. Most of these terrestrial cats prefer areas where, like terra firme, or areas where they can roam largely without the problem of having floods every once in a while. So no, basically we have had reports of jaguars, but probably about only 3 or 4 in the last 6 years, I remember. So actually, personally speaking, the best place right now to see jaguars in the world is the Pantanal in Brazil. We also go there. But no, basically in this journey we will see more than 8 species of monkeys, more than 100 and something species of birds, some of the mammals that I mentioned, like the sloths. With some luck we might see like an armadillo or a capybara, the river dolphins, and many different species of insects and frogs and fish. And this is not the perfect place for mammals, again, because everything here is related with water, basically.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Thank you for helping us understand that. What about insects? Are insects a problem when you're off the boat, such as mosquitoes or other type of insects?
No, well, basically, we always recommend you, of course, to wear what we call the fall jungle attire, which is long pants, long sleeve shirts, your pants tucked inside your socks, because the less parts of your body that you have exposed, the less you will be bitten. But basically, this is not a place where you will be overwhelmed by a swarm of mosquitoes just flying around you. No, I remember I had more mosquitoes in the mangroves of the Everglades, for example, than we have in the Amazon. And the area has all these well-known diseases that nowadays are controlled, but basically, just for your information, some of the dangerous diseases are active at nighttime. Besides mostly being eradicated from the area, we are not out at night more often. And when we go out, we recommend you to, use all the protections. But it's really not a problem, they won't be a nuisance, let's say.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, I thank you so much for your time today. This has been just such a great webinar, so informative. We can finish with our questions now. So let me turn it back over to you, Renzo, for any other thoughts you might like to share with our audience before we say goodbye.
Well, thank you very much again for your attention and patience. And well, I hope to see you there. This is really an amazing part of our planet. And remember that here we are part of the solution, not part of the problem. And with all our effort and energy, we try to make this a better place.
Yes, yes, so true. Thank you. All right, well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us today, and we will get the replay out in an email. We will get that out to you by about this time tomorrow. So with that, we will conclude our webinar. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.